Hey now, yeah, good morning, PSW staff, clients, friends joining us for Tuesday. Thanks for tuning in. Yesterday, we looked at your film scoring assignment, which is King Kong, the 1933 film. So get that into me by today. We'll see the results for Friday. Today, we're going to look at a massive genius who's going to make all of us feel a little bit bad, inadequate, like we're not working hard enough. I mean, this guy was just so cool. Wrote some really wonderful music. Can't wait to share it with you. Troubled life, troubled soul, but genius. Yeah, we're going to be looking at the very famous Russian composer, Shostakovich. Dmitri Shostakovich, quite a name, Soviet-Russian composer and pianist, regarded as one of the biggest composers of the 20th century, not just Russian composers, but really biggest composers. Used a pretty cool harmonic language, and all under this horrible man, Stalin. We're going to look at Stalin. We've talked a little bit about Joseph Stalin, but the dictator, the communist dictator in Russia, and kind of think about the horrible story of how Shostakovich was able to thrive as an artist in this government that was very oppressive. So we're going to figure out how he did that and how he was able to still write great music. So let's talk about Dmitri. Born 1906 in St. Petersburg, Russia. So where's my free Google map? There it is. Let's head from Hollywood to Russia, where it seems a little bit dangerous. He dies in 1975 in Moscow, Russia. So lives kind of a long life, pretty much, for being a highly OCD, obsessive, cleanly. We'll get into his personality a little bit later, but mother teaches him music when he's 9. So this guy writes 15 symphonies, 6 concerti, 15 string quartets, a piano quintet, 2 pieces of string octet, solo piano works, including 2 piano sonatas, early set of preludes, and a later set of 24 preludes and fugues. That's a lot of music. And he had kind of different styles of music. I mean, we're talking about under the umbrella of classical music, but he kind of had a hybrid voice. He had different music. As we're listening, we're going to be hearing different instrumentation, different percussion instruments, marimbas, glockenspiels. What I love about his music is that there's a whole lot of humor and a lot of movement, excitement in it. He was very influenced by Stravinsky, who was another Russian composer going on at the same time, and also Mahler, who was a romantic composer that had gone on a little bit before him. Let's look at our timeline, because Stravinsky, obviously, as we know, lives a really long life, but we're looking, if you remember Prokofiev, who was another famous Russian composer that we looked at. Prokofiev's going on at the same time. He's writing music, Stravinsky's writing music, so we have all these Russians dominating classical music. Dmitri's parents, they came from Siberia, and his father was a biologist and engineer, and his mother was a pianist. So she teaches him, and when his dad died, the 16-year-old had to go out and get himself a job. So he got a job in the cinema, playing music to accompany silent films. We've looked at this with other composers. If you remember, Carl Stalling started playing organ or at the local theater to silent films. That's how these composers get their some of their training. But Shostakovich does go to the conservatory, gets a great classical education. 19 years old, composes his first symphony. Already a prodigy at 19 years old, and after graduation goes on to a pretty good career as a pianist and a composer. Now, Stalin, he lives under Stalin's regime from 1924 to when Stalin dies in 1953. We talked about Stalin dying the same day as Prokofiev, 1953. Very strange how that happened. So Shostakovich was, not that this is going to be political, but he was really forced to live under this totalitarian regime most of his career. His music was very judged by political rather than musical criteria, which is terrible. We know that Hitler loved Wagner and used his music, but Wagner was long dead, of course. So Stalin wants to use Shostakovich as a living composer to, for propaganda and stuff. So every day brought more bad news to Shostakovich because he was very lonely, very afraid of writing the wrong kind of music. Because these were the days where if you did something wrong, it's probably still like that actually with Putin. If you did something wrong, you were killed. There wasn't really a warning there. And many of Shostakovich's friends were killed just for not following the government. It's really not until 1936 when Stalin all of a sudden arrives for an opera performance that Shostakovich is working on, and after that Stalin was like, this is too avant-garde. You can't write this kind of music, not under my government. So of course Shostakovich is, what do you say to that? I'm an artist. I'm free to do what I want. You can't say that to Stalin, who, as we know, killed more people than Hitler actually. So after fierce criticism of Shostakovich's music in 1936, he changes the direction of his music. Specifically with Symphony No. 5, that's when it becomes, Stalin likes this because it becomes a universal message of triumph for the Russian Communist Party. And it made Shostakovich a public hero. Now, I don't know if he loved the music that he was writing. He probably did, but you really feel a slave to these people, and these people that don't understand music, and they don't, I think, he was troubled. Imagine writing in times like that where you're like, if this, now it's like if we have lyrics or rap or poetry that offends, they were living in times where the wrong, measure or bar or chord could offend. It sounds ridiculous, but again, it wasn't that long ago. 1960, Shostakovich gives in to pressure and joins the Communist Party. He didn't want to, but It caused him personal misery, and friends hated him. Friends and colleagues. I mean, he was ostracized. People would walk across the street. It was probably confusing because there was probably a no-win. You either go with the government or you don't go, and whichever way you decide, you're going to lose people on either ends. And like I said, a number of his friends and colleagues were executed during this period known as the Great Terror. So just so sad. So as a result, commissions began to fall off, and Shostakovich's income fell by about 3/4. I mean, so now he's poor. His Fourth Symphony was due to premiere in 1936, but he withdrew it because it was banned. So the symphony wasn't performed until 1961. So, I mean, he had to really create a low profile. By doing this, he composed a lot of film scores, about, 36 film scores, a genre favored by Stalin. Stalin liked that he was doing this. Shostakovich suffered pretty bad health, chronic bad health later. He couldn't give up cigarettes, and he couldn't give up vodka. He dies of lung cancer in 1975. A lot of the stuff that he wrote was in his head. Think about how hard this is. Shostakovich once said that as a composer, he thought long and wrote fast. This is probably how Mozart, probably some of the other people did, meaning that he would compose all of the whole piece in his head before he even would write it down, which is an amazing feat because some of his music is over an hour long. Some of his symphonies are. So to hear the entire symphony in your head before you write it down, I can't even fathom that. We talked about his OCD. He was an obsessive man. He was obsessed with cleanliness. Regularly sent himself cards to test how well the postal service was working, which is something I used to do. But I mean, he was fragile and very nervous. And when he asked if he believed in God, Shostakovich said no, and I'm very sorry about it. So we're hearing a lot of humor, good, patriotic sounding, brilliant music. What I love is we're really going to discover something wonderful that he wrote in 1934. So this is in between all of this very serious classical music. Stalin's still alive. I don't know where this idea came from. I was trying to find out. But he writes a jazz suite, and that's really what we're here for. The Jazz Suite for Orchestra number 1. Okay, so number 2 comes in 1938, a few years later. This jazz suite has 3 movements, and it's scored for 3 saxophones, soprano, alto, and tenor, 2 trumpets, trombone, woodblock, snare, drums, cymbals, glockenspiel, xylophone, banjo, Hawaiian guitar, piano, violin, and double bass. So that's quite a big ensemble. And take a listen. Does it sound like jazz music? Not really, right? Does it sound like his classical music? No, not really. um, Very odd instrumentation that I can think of perhaps sounds a little bit like we looked at a long time ago, the Three Penny Opera. Kurt Weill's music, kind of that gypsy-like, street-like sounds that's a little bit harsh sounding. See if you've heard of this song. That's Shostakovich's Jazz Waltz Number 2, made very famous by Kubrick's Eyes Wide Shut, my favorite Kubrick film, FYI. Played a lot, though. You've probably heard. So that's probably his most famous piece. But the Jazz Suite, so that's in Suite Number 2. So what I played was from Number 1, and Suite Number 2 was called Suite for Jazz Orchestra Number 2. And what are we hearing? This is his version of what jazz perhaps would sound like, because when you're in Russia, you're hearing stories from foreigners and what people are hearing all around the world, and you're getting glimpses. I don't know if, I just don't know if he had a lot of recordings. I doubt he was listening to Duke Ellington, or if that was available there. I read that Scott Joplin was available to some of these composers living in Russia. So I can hear Scott Joplin's influence in some of these things. The ragtime, the foxtrot, some of those things. But where is he? What kind of music? This is just the most beautiful, wonderful music. Maybe my favorite music in the world. Isn't it? I mean, isn't it just lovely? It's super romantic, but it's dark romantic. I love the different instrumentation. It is like a jazz, honky-tonk jazz, saxophone, vibraphone, accordion, street jazz. It's not improvised, though. I mean, Duke Ellington was improvising stuff. Fats Waller, they were improvising. This is all strictly notated. This doesn't sound like improvisatory jazz at all. It's not supposed to. It's notated correctly. Scott Joplin's was notated too, but that doesn't mean that it can't be fun and free-like. Just Shostakovich, genius. I don't know where these pieces came from in his mind, in his head, what he thought about them. I have no idea. It seems it came out of the 1930s. And it's what a treat. I do really love his other classical music, but boy, these are gems. His little jazz suites changed the way I write and think about music forever. But hey, it's not a class about me, so I'm sorry I keep interjecting. I just get excited, so that's it. Okay, and that's it. I've said it all. That's Shostakovich, great Russian composer. Too bad he was under Stalin. I wonder if he would have been born in a different country. It makes you think that our country has a lot of problems, but we have freedoms to write and to think whatever we want to think, and we shouldn't take that for granted. That the government can't tell you what to write, what to think, what art to do. That's an amazing, beautiful thing about this country. So, if I was born in Russia, I'd be screwed on so many levels. So, okay, love you, miss you. Tomorrow, it's just going to be a Bonnie-rific, terrific Wednesday. So, can't wait to share that with you. Okay, take care. Bye.